Welcome to STEAM Powered, where I have conversations with women in STEAM to learn a little bit about what they do and who they are. I'm your host, Michele Ong. My guest today is Dr. Merryn McKinnon. Merryn is a science communication academic and practitioner who researches perceptions of STEM and the relationship between science, media, and the public. Join us as we talk about her journey from marine sciences to science communication research and perceptions of women STEM communicators. Good afternoon, Merryn. Thank you so much for joining me today on STEAM Powered. I'm really happy to have you on today to talk about all these very, very interesting topics.
My pleasure. Thank you for the invitation.
Wonderful. So, we'll start with the usual from the beginning. You started off in marine science and then went into journalism and now science communication, working on the perceptions of science and technology issues. But how did you get from there to here?
It's a very convoluted path, and everyone else says, "Oh, hey, did you have a career plan?" It's like, yeah, but every plan I made didn't work out, but somehow in the end it all came out in the wash. So I guess I began in marine science, and that was very much, I grew up on the central coast of New South Wales, and I was near the beach, and I loved the beach. It was my happy place, still is my happy place, and I just wanted to learn more about that environment, and also I wanted to help protect and conserve it. And so I was halfway through my honours year, and I was doing research on intertidal snails. They're a party animal, I know. But, I was counting these snails on one of my sites, and I could see these two kids. It was an older sister. I think she was probably about maybe, I don't know, 8 or 10, and she had a younger brother, about 2 years younger. And I could see them watching me, like, what is she doing? Because I'm just, squatting down, counting these things, making notes, counting more things. And they were just like a crazy lady. So eventually they couldn't hold it anymore. They came out, "What are you doing?" So I said, "Oh, I'm counting these animals." Animals? What animals? And so we had this big conversation about all the different types of snails that I was finding, and then the algae that they'd eat and what lived where. And so then they were convinced that I wasn't insane, and they went off and were going to do their usual stuff, just sort of exploring. And then the little boy, being a little boy, started kicking at some of the barnacles, and his sisters come charging over and smacked him upside the head and said, "Don't do that, you'll hurt the animals." It was like this real light bulb moment for me of, I've just changed perceptions of what's here, and that's influenced a response.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's something to this. So it was like, at the time I was kind of like, I really don't know if a career in research is what I'm after, and jobs in the field that I was interested in were really, really hard. And even if I did manage to get one, I will probably end up earning less than I currently was as a waitress. So as serendipity would have it, I saw an ad in the newspaper, a physical newspaper, so I'm revealing my age, which said, "Do you have a science degree? Do you love to travel? And then why not join the Science Circus?" So I ended up moving to Canberra to do a degree in science communication, which also had me travelling around Australia doing science shows in schools and community centres, and that was just the gateway drug. After that it was like, science communication, that's where it's at. So that's how I ended up here.
But you don't just focus on kids now anymore, do you?
No, I don't play with children anymore, no. I've had my fun.
You've had your fun. So tell me about the Science Circus. What did that involve?
So it's changed quite a lot. So when I went through, it was a graduate diploma. Now it's a 1-year master's program. So it's very academically intense. But back when I did it, it was learning how to develop shows and programs that would suit non-specialist audiences. So science communication really can be boiled down to 2 really simple rules, which is know your audience and then know your goals. So who are you talking to? And then once you've spoken to them, what do you want them to do, think, feel, remember? And once you have those 2 things, then the rest of it kind of falls into place. It sounds really simple and straightforward to say it like that.
So straightforward.
So it's easy. So it was very much about the practical realities of doing that and going out and trialing it in schools. It's kind of like the world is your laboratory, and kids have no filter. If they don't like something, they're going to tell you. So it was a steep learning curve, but you learned so much. And I think it probably still does inform a lot of what I do in lectures and more formal lectures and education today. But so yeah, that we had a little bit of the theoretical side of things. Now that has been strengthened and expanded quite a lot. But a core part was that travelling around Australia, actually doing what it says on the tin. So engaging people with science and just sort of changing their perception of who a scientist is and what a scientist does and where a science career can take you.
That's awesome. Like, just being able to bring all of that gateway knowledge to these kids and, trying to evoke more of those responses like you had with that little girl on the beach. That's very cool. So from there, you're now talking more about issues relating to science and technology. So what led to doing this kind of work instead of more of the outreach specific stuff?
Well, I found that I worked at Questacon, so the National Science and Technology Centre here in Canberra for a while. They're the partner with the Science Circus along with the ANU, and at that time Shell was also one of the partners. And so outreach was fun, and I'm young and single and nothing tying me down, so I was like, yeah, let's travel. And so did a couple of years with an outreach program and traveled a lot, but then quickly realized it was like, actually, living out of a bag for this long, I think I'm done. But during that process, it was very much learning what else a science communicator does as well. So I had then this period of about 10 years, I suppose, where I really just explored science communication in lots of different facets. So went and worked for what used to be the Australian Science Festival Limited. So we used to have this big science festival during National Science Week each year. So went and did that, went and changed my status from single to not single, and as a consequence of that ended up moving overseas, doing some more development focused work, but certainly still in the teaching and learning space. But while I was over there and the work that I'd done leading up to that, it was kind of like, well, if I want to be an effective communicator, I need to know how to engage with the media, because they're a crucial channel for not only getting information out, but quite often public perceptions about people, places, things. Media very much help form that and help to create the norms and the stereotypes that exist and persist. So I was like, okay, well, I'll learn a bit more about journalism. And so I did a Masters of Journalism by distance education while I was overseas, and it was fantastic. I learned a lot. Probably the key takeaway message being, I don't want to be a journalist. I can't like that. It's like, I don't want to do that all day, every day, and have this relentless cycle. Like, I like talking to people, hearing their stories, but yeah, definitely the writing the hard news articles quickly, day in, day out, was like, no, that's not for me. Thank you. It's been real, but no. And then, I don't know, just sort of, kept exploring, went back to outreach, except then I was sort of running one of the programs rather than being one of the presenters. So doing a little bit more on the training and development side of things, and moved overseas again and was finishing my PhD at that time. So I had a baby and a thesis at the same time. And honestly, I would do it the same way again. Once you have a child, you know how precious time is. So when you have 20 minutes, you are working that 20 minutes for everything. It's awesome. Exhausting. Awesome.
Hyper-focused, yeah.
Hyper-focused, yes. But after I'd finished that, I ended up falling into some casual academic work overseas, going back to my marine science roots, because they wanted someone who could lecture in environmental science. So the materials were all there. They just wanted someone to be able to develop it and deliver it. So it was kind of all of my skills and experience led me to that. I got into academia and went, oh, this is a bit of all right. I kind of have fun with this. And then a job was advertised here at the Centre for the Public Awareness of Science at the ANU, where my whole science communication career began. And jobs coming up here never happened, so I went, oh, I'll have to apply for that. and it was for a role teaching science in the media. So everything I'd done had equipped me. It is, yeah, and it did. So my mother was like, I can't believe that career background actually worked for you. She was for a while there. She's like, you're changing
So
jobs
much faith.
again? What are you doing? I was like, it's all right, Mum, it'll be fine. And it was. So there.
Yeah, I mean, it's a perfect confluence of all of those experiences. So now you're working on the science communication and in the area of trying to communicate all of these issues. But, you know, your focus is now on perceptions. And what sort of work have you been doing in that area, kind of research-wise?
So I have, I guess, two kind of mainstream streams of research. So one is that relationship between science or scientists, media, and publics. So how people respond to and react to issues that are presented in the news, and how the presentation of news influences public perceptions. And then I guess both separately and related to that is the perceptions of who does STEM, like science, technology, engineering, maths kind of research, and the characteristics that make you a successful scientist or engineer, and how the media can also contribute to those perceptions and stereotypes as well. And so the two of those things together have started to merge and mingle and then unpick and come back. But it's both a blessing and a curse. There is a lot that is very, very topical about gender stereotypes and inclusion and intersectionality and all of those things, and a lot that we really don't know. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, little side story. It's kind of related to why I'm doing this. When I was in I did computer science for an undergrad. I did an honours degree. My research was in the psychometric assessment of potential computing students for the purpose of encouraging recruitment and retention. It was trying to figure out, what kind of stereotypes we had. Do people who like Star Wars and Star Trek happen to make better computer scientists? I don't know. So it's just kind of stuff like that. It was about psychometric assessment. So it was trying to figure out whether there was a way, because we were having heaps of people just bailing out on the degree for various reasons. Too hard, not what they expected. And they were areas which probably should have been delved into in more detail, but I didn't want to do a PhD. So
Fair call.
Yeah. So, but it did make me think about, all these reasons for, what people had expected coming in. Because when I was tutoring, we had people coming into the infotech and CS, and they just thought, I'm going to be Bill Gates. I am going to spend my time at uni on instant messenger, chatting to friends and playing online games. And
totally, that's how you get a degree. Absolutely.
It's like, yeah, sure. If you want a games degree, wrong uni, different type of games degree. But, people have these ideas about what science and tech is, and they're not necessarily accurate. And it's just that because they don't have that experience of understanding what's out there. And when we were at school, it's better now, obviously it's been a couple of decades, but before then it was just what people told us was the experience of STEM. And we get taught the core of biology, chemistry, physics, and there's not much room to expand to where that can really take us truly. So you get, a lot of people dropping out, not understanding, people finding things are hard because they don't know that there's other routes, and like yourself, finding other ways of getting to where we want to be. So all of that's very interesting to me. But I digress. Coming back to, what you're working on. My friend told me about this paper. She is the editor of the Helix magazine by Cyro. And she was saying, I saw this paper of yours and of Merryn's, and, I'm kind of concerned now because how does that impact what I do? And it was the perceptions of stereotypes applied to women who publicly communicate their STEM work. And just that paper title alone is like, oh goodness, what's this going to lead to? So what prompted you and your co-author Christine O'Connell to write about this specific issue? I mean, you've already talked about perceptions in the media, but what prompted this specific paper?
I think at the time, So Christine and I were both women in academia and women in STEM, and we were seeing and experiencing a lot of the same stories and the same issues. So both of us were involved in working with STEM researchers and running workshops and training them, or providing them with more tools and techniques to be more effective in communicating their work. And some of the stories that we started hearing, and just a few of the throwaway comments, it was kind of like, there's something going on here. And I mean, there were other people who had, there's already a body of research. I mean, even you in your honours degree, like, I think people are still trying to find answers to some of those questions that you're posing and things that you were interested in. I think we still don't have a lot of answers to some of those things.
Yeah.
So Christine and I just started talking, went, we should explore this. And so we thought, okay, well, while we're exploring, maybe we can do something to, help women deal with these kinds of stereotypes that we're hearing all the time as well. I don't know, like, there's always, I think, subconsciously, or sometimes even extremely consciously in society, you are told to behave and act a certain way, and often those are quite gendered. And so watching how these social norms, I suppose, are implemented and then impact upon how you function as a human being in your professional and personal life, that was something that we're like, it was interesting for us to delve into a little bit more. So we ran these focus groups and then did a workshop for the participants afterwards. But I often describe it as research that makes you drink, because we would say, okay, just, you've got 10 minutes or 20 minutes or something. What are all the stereotypes that you have applied, or you've heard applied, or have had applied to you when you're speaking publicly about your work? And get these, massive sheets that are full of words and phrases. And we ran these in lots of different locations. So I think we had something like close to 30 different nationalities represented. We'd done these studies, these workshops in lots of different settings. So we had people from a whole range of different backgrounds, career stages, some in academia, private enterprise, public research organisations. But the same things just kept coming up again and again and again. And it was just like, oh my God. So, looking at it and going, okay, well, these are all of the stereotypes that are applied, but then talking to women about how can we reclaim ownership? How can we flip these stereotypes and take something like, the most common ones were bitchy, bossy, and emotional. And it's kind of like, none of those things by themselves have an immediately positive connotation, but you can flip it. So if you are emotional, it means that you have the capacity to recognize more than two emotions in yourself and others. And being able to do that, that also means that you are more empathetic as a team member or as a leader, and you can use that to help get better results for the team and the work that you produce. So being emotional doesn't have to be a negative thing. It can actually be a really positive thing. And you can use that to advance your career and those of others. So sort of learning how to flip and reframe these stereotypes. But I think probably one of the biggest things for us as well was we'd go through all of these stereotypes with each of the groups, and we'd say, okay, we've just gone through all of these and how to flip them. But show of hands, and let's be honest, how many of you have also applied these stereotypes to other women? And Christine and I would put our hand up because we have, and every single time it'd be like 99% of the people, mostly women, would put up their hand. So we're on the receiving end of this, but we're also perpetuating it amongst ourselves. So it's quite often you see that this it's men doing bad things, or it's women who, the queen bee phenomenon, they're not helping each other. It's a little bit of both, and it's a societal problem that needs a societal solution, recognizing all genders and everybody has a role to play.
Yeah. like men aren't the only ones who are influenced by all of these cultural norms that are inflicted on us. You know, we're going to be on the receiving end because we're the ones who have to meet those norms or expected to meet those norms. So of course we're going to use that as a baseline for judgment on other people too at some point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, you know, aside from discovering the things that make you drink, was there anything particularly surprising in what you learned from that?
Oh, look, all of it was quite surprising in so many ways. Just the scale and scope and the number of stereotypes that get applied. I think something like about a dozen different categories. And there seems to be this tightrope upon which women have to walk. And you can't be too old, but you can't be too young. You can be pretty, but you can't be too pretty. You can wear makeup, but you can't wear too much makeup. You can't,
Yep.
you know, try too hard or not try. There's this constant sense of there's an equilibrium that you somehow need to innately sense and then meet. No wonder I'm tired, you know?
Yeah, that's a lot of mental load right there.
It is, yeah. So it's kind of these expectations which are placed upon us from society, from the organisations, from ourselves. And I think a lot of that contributes to a lot of the stress, the anxiety, the general decrease in overall well-being that we can experience. So I know from my own experience, the expectations I had of myself and the story I was telling myself was very different to what was the actual fact. So I drove myself to almost an emotional and near physical breakdown, trying to meet these expectations which I thought everybody had of me, but actually they didn't. So yeah, it's kind of like that old saying, you know, that you like beating your head against the brick wall, but it feels so good when you stop.
Definitely. So what brought you to your realization that this was not the true perception that you had, that this was partly self-inflicted?
I was part of a program called Homeward Bound, which is a leadership program for women in STEM. And one of the processes that they get you to go through is using this diagnostic. And normally I was one of those people who was like, oh yeah, diagnostic personality types, yeah, sure, whatever. I'm sure it's all very scientific, great. This one, I think because it also came with someone talking you through it, and it really forced you to hold up a mirror to yourself and go, okay, maybe I do have a role in this after all. Interesting. So that was incredibly liberating, and it did have an immediate impact of, wow, I can stop this. I can change this right now. And so I'm better able to recognize when I'm doing it to myself. It wasn't a silver bullet. So I'm constantly a work in progress, but being able to recognize that in other people now, like some of my students or even my daughter, that's been incredibly useful, just to try and stop it before it becomes fully ingrained or before it starts to do a huge amount of damage. Like just looking at the warning signs and going, actually, let's just, are we dealing with fact or fiction here? Let's go back to the source.
Sometimes you just need that external kind of factor to make you really reflect on the way that you deal with things. And yeah, it's hard. Just because of all the expectations and all the perceptions and all the things that we feel that we have to be able to meet and qualify. And yeah, you need some perspective.
You do, and you need someone not in your immediate circle to tell you. So my husband and my mother have been saying to me for years, and I'm like, it's fine. So somebody else comes along and it's like, it's not fine. Okay, you were right. Shut up.
Yes, definitely need someone like that.
So we call it getting a critical ally. So someone who is invested in wanting you to succeed, but not so close that you have that personal, emotional investment. It's purely transactional.
Definitely, you need that honest friend who, will just tell you things as it is. So from your findings, what were your conclusions about how we can move forward from this?
Unfortunately, it's not one clear path. It's messy and multifaceted. So
Yes.
it really does come down to women can do things. Women aren't broken. No, we don't need fixing per se. We can certainly start to reclaim some of these stereotypes and flip them and monitor our own behaviour towards other women. But this needs a societal response. So we need to look at how we're talking about gender and inclusion and who does certain things and the stereotypes that exist. So even within schooling, there's certainly more attention being paid to it now, but even I guess if you look at the toy department in like the toy section in like any kind of department store,
Yep.
all the girls' toys are pink and they're to do with animals and maybe medicine perhaps, but possibly the nurse rather than the doctor. Whereas the boys get the blue stuff and it's all about the engineering, the jets, the cars, the this, the that, and that's really, really subtle, but it's also constantly reinforcing that girls go to the biology and the caring and nurturing fields, and boys, you go off with engineering and
the analytical and the harder type
exactly.
of fields.
And then sometimes subconsciously or unconsciously, teachers will push boys more towards the harder disciplines and push the girls more towards the softer. But it's just these realizations almost at every single step along the way that we need to address it within the family. We need to address it in our consumer behavior. We need to address it in schools. We then need to address it in all of the organizations that we work in our workplace policies. We need to rebuild from the ground up, and that's really going to take time. But by the same token, if we want to address a lot of the issues that we're facing as a global society, we need to be drawing upon the skills, ideas, expertise, innovation, and creativity of the entire population, not just one dominant cultural group. And that
Yes.
tends to be white male style. So
Yeah.
it's about harnessing everybody. Research has shown that the more diversity you have in the team, the more creative it is, the more innovative it is, the better it performs. If you achieve at least 30% female leadership in organizations and in boards, then you better performance in terms of financial outcomes, actual performance indicators. I mean, what have we got to lose except for a shift in the status quo?
Yeah, exactly. There's really no true downside to this. You're only going to be able to help innovate better and, expand our knowledge and expand our capabilities by being able to draw from more of these people who want to contribute as well. But, that's about trying to get, I guess, more people in, but how does that impact the way that we change the perceptions? I mean, we're still going to be dealing with for a while the issues where we're bitchy, we're bossy, we're too outspoken. That's still, a big part of, I guess, the psyche and the way that we do interact with each other, as women or as men interacting with women. Yeah, how do you go about, getting kind of all of that moving? I don't know how to phrase that.
Yeah, well, that's good because I'm not entirely sure how to answer it really either.
Yes.
I think it's certainly removing that surprise of seeing, a woman or a person of colour in a particular role. So I think if you said doctor or nurse, you have a very clear image in your mind about what the doctor looks like and then what the nurse looks like. And so it's about, if we make these fields and these disciplines more inclusive, then it'll become more normal to have a variety of different people working in these roles. So we take away that, I didn't expect that kind of factor.
Yeah.
And
it becomes more natural to expect
Exactly.
that the capabilities and the competency is going to be the same regardless of the gender and the appearance and the background.
Exactly. And I think this quote's been attributed to everybody. I think one of them is Sally Ride, who's a NASA astronaut. And, you can't be what you can't see. So having these role models, but acknowledging, and that was one of the core things of our paper, is one of the solutions to increasing the perception of what is normal within STEM disciplines is to have these highly visible role models who are like, oh, so, a scientist can look like this, or an engineer can look like this. But acknowledging that by putting these people in this role model position, we are also opening them up to all of these other stereotypes which they might have to deal with as well. So making sure that we're supporting these people who are doing this very important work, and just making sure that being the face of a discipline or an organisation or a particular research project isn't something that's also going to cost them personally, in terms of having criticism levelled at you.
Yeah, and that's very difficult right now, because you're spending more time on social media.
I try not to.
I know it's anyway, other things, but you see all these amazing people, men and women, speaking up about what they do, being very passionate about their topic, and you start seeing the responses that you get, the reply guys, the people trying to explain or mansplain what it is that they do for a living. And it, for some of them, you can see every now and then it's like, no, this has been too much. I have to take a step back, because they're being penalized for wanting to share something that they truly love and they truly want other people to love as well. And seeing in this paper about how we do reflect negatively on people who do this, it's really tough, because you want them to speak up more, but you don't want them to end up getting the threats and the hostility. And it's almost a thankless kind of job to do this, because a lot of them do it for the love, not for the money.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I think it is, social media is great because you can have so many other people in the conversation that you normally wouldn't ever have. But that's also the downside of social media, because suddenly everyone who has an opinion has a platform. And some of these opinions are not helpful, not constructive. And there are people who just want to jump on there and make other people's lives miserable, which says more about them and the quality of their own happiness rather than the person that they're trying to act against. So I guess in some ways there is a role for everybody. I mean, the standard you walk past is the standard you accept. So if you see these kind of comments, or if you see this undesirable behaviour occurring, think about ways where you can shift the conversation back to something more appropriate, more constructive, more helpful. Or if you are comfortable, call it out. I think people need to be told when they're crossing a line. And sometimes having somebody else step in and go, actually, don't be a bad person. What good are you contributing right now?
Yes.
I think that can also be very powerful and sometimes very healing for the person who's on the end of the criticism.
Yeah, we just all have to, step up and support each other when all of this kind of stuff happens. And it's happening more and more as well, just because we've got more time. Yeah. So with the workshops that you ran, when you were collecting this information, and it wouldn't have been at the point where you had all the data to analyze, but you were talking to them about switching and reframing a lot of these negative connotations. What sort of feedback did you get from the group as a response, and did they respond in a way reflecting on their own perceptions and their own behaviours?
Yeah, there was a lot of comment of, this whole discussion was really good. There's not a lot of time and space carved out for for people to actually talk about their experience. So there's a lot of stuff on professional development and this is how you do this, but actually being able to go, you know what? This was really unpleasant. A lot of people don't want to talk about the unpleasant things. So I think there was probably a couple of light globe moments going, oh, actually, yeah, I don't have to accept the stereotype as it's given to me. I can reframe it, and yeah, I don't have to accept the label. I can write my own label, or I can be comfortable with whatever label you want to throw at me because I don't see it that way. And I think there was probably more awareness of the little things that we tend to do as well. And you know, she said applying broad stereotypical strokes, but you know, using the words like just. Now, I'm just emailing, or I just want to suggest. Using that in your own language, you're diminishing yourself and the quality of your ideas, and being aware of that. You know, the first step is admitting you have a problem. So being able to identify it in your practice and go, I'm going to stop doing this now. I'm going to pay close attention to this and only this in what I do. Because for 3 weeks, if you try and fix all of the problems at once, it gets too overwhelming. So you can pick the thing that you want to work on most, and it might be removing the word just from emails, or saying sorry when really you mean thank you. It's instead of, oh, I'm so sorry I'm late. And it's like, thank you for your patience. It means the same thing. You're expressing appreciation the same way, but you're not, and to the receiver,
minimizing yourself.
Yeah, exactly. So little tips and techniques like that, and also I think an increased sense of solidarity, I guess, that like, oh, actually I can control what I say and do and direct towards others. Nice to be reminded of that, because we stop reminding ourselves of that, or we stop being reminded of that around the same time we hit high school, or maybe partway through, I don't know. And realistically, I think that's probably when we need more reminding. But just that, what you say and do does have consequences for other people. So, what kind of person do you want to be out in the world? And you can help others. So that was probably some of the dominant things which came out of the workshop, and their realization of, it was also really common to have women come in going, I haven't experienced any kind of gendered discrimination or anything in my work. And then they start telling stories, and you can see the penny drop about halfway through. Like, oh my God. And from the responses to others, like, well, now I'm just pissed off. So yeah, kind of bursting a few bubbles along the way, I think, as well.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
But that's a lot of it, isn't it? Because there's so much casualization of all these behaviours that you take for granted when you are a recipient of it. You just go, oh, it's just one of those things. You just carry on, and then later on, when you actually reflect on the event, it's like, well, actually, yeah, that was a problem. Probably didn't think about that at the time.
Yeah, it's these tiny little microaggressions. They're like little paper cuts again and again and again, or the frog in the boiling pot of water. You don't really notice it. It's happening so gradually until all of a sudden you realize that you're in deep trouble and you need to get out of there. But yeah, similar kind of dawning realization, I suppose.
I can just imagine some of those expressions and the people just having that moment going, oh my God, I really need to be upset about this.
Like, we're really sorry, like, have another biscuit.
Yeah. Moments that you need to drink for. Yeah. So, very interesting. Are you continuing more of this sort of research, or is it just expanding into other areas of how we can kind of work towards, more inclusivity and more diversity?
Yeah, a lot of my work from them has started to spiral out into, so from those same workshops, we've literally just published another paper, which is specifically looking at the barriers to career progression of academic women in STEM. But a lot of that, we're not saying anything new. It's stuff that everybody knows. And so I think some of my work now is looking at, okay, we've described the problem from every conceivable angle and in every conceivable shade and hue. Like, let's start looking at it. How do you actually start fixing it? And so looking at what we are doing to address inequity in the STEM disciplines, because I've got to put fences up somewhere, otherwise the work will never done. But looking at the kinds of mechanisms, so things like role models, things like mentor programs, workshops, all of these kinds of things. What do they actually achieve? What do they do to and for the people who participate? And then how can we actually change perceptions to help enable some of those broader policy and systemic changes at an organisational level? Developing other kinds of workshops. With a cohort across the ACT in New South Wales as part of the Science in Australia Gender Equity, so SAGE network, we've developed an intersectionality walk where we give people personas and then we read out all of these different scenarios and they take a step out if they're disadvantaged based on their scenario. And so you get people literally walking in the shoes of others and to understand how different identities can actually overlap and compound disadvantage for certain individuals. And so just really giving people that very practical, tangible other perspective of, oh, I've never seen it or conceived of it this way before. So yeah, I think very much now I'm shifting towards, okay, how do we fix this sucker? How do we actually make a dent? What can we do? So yeah, that's where I'm heading now.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And like seeing all of these things, like the walk, the being able to show people about where the disadvantages and trying to, make people more aware about all these potential areas that were, previously invisible to most people. Are these sorts of workshops and programs, how widespread are they, or are they focused on specific groups?
There are quite a few. So I was the lead researcher for the Academy of Science Decadal Plan for Women in STEM. And one of the first things we did was look at, okay, what exists out there? And so we just sort of we wanted to have that gender focus because it was a plan for women in STEM. So we just looked at women. But we managed to find, I think it was about 330 programs and initiatives across Australia. Obviously we've missed a few. No net is perfect. Some holes are bigger than others. But from all of these initiatives, fewer than 7 had any kind of evaluation, and fewer still had, or publicly available evaluation, and fewer still had any meaningful, rigorous evidence that what they did had any impact whatsoever. So we have lots of programs tailored to specific disciplines, to different cultural groups, to different career stages and ages and regions, and you name it, we've got it. What we don't have is evidence of what works. And so that we're throwing money at these problems and these issues, but we're not actually exploring in any meaningful way.
None of it's measurable.
Exactly. Yeah. Is this money well spent? I don't know. Just throw more at it. Okay, sure.
We're making an effort.
Yeah, just keep putting band-aids on it. It'll be fine.
From that kind of, evaluation, has there been any work done to try and, create a system where it is a bit more measurable or, make it a bit
certainly
more
a bigger push now. The Office of the Ambassador for Women in STEM have put together an evaluation toolkit which provides examples and guidelines and instructions and resources to help people who are interested or running these programs how to actually measure and find out what works. So I think there's a growing realization and push now from both the community and the policy ends to go, actually, we need to pay closer attention to this. Will that attention be sustained? I don't know.
Guess we'll find out. It's kind of part of what the plan is, right?
Well, yes, yeah. So it will be for the life of the decadal plan, that's for sure. But yeah, after that.
At least we're trying to make progress. And
exactly.
It's it's cool seeing that a lot of this stuff is done, but you know, there's so much of it out there. I mean, nobody really knows about it unless they're in the actual space. So yeah, it's good to hear about all these interesting initiatives. It's great. So from there, might go on to some of those extra questions I had mentioned. What hobby or interest do you have that is most unrelated to your field of work?
Probably playing soccer. Yeah.
Oh, soccer. Nice.
Love it. I only started playing, like I played a little bit in high school, and I think maybe once very casually when I was about 20. And then so naturally, when you turn 40, it's kind of like, yeah, let's go run around a field for a while and chase after a small round white thing. But I loved it, absolutely love it. My team is fabulous. We have a lot of laughs, so we don't take ourselves too seriously. And if we don't laugh during a game, then we're just not playing it right. So yeah, love it.
That's awesome. So that's just local league?
Yes.
That's cool. Yeah. So how long have you been doing that for?
Coming into my 3rd year now. So. Yeah,
Ooh,
not very long.
Very nice. Not very long, but still enjoyable.
I love it, yeah.
Yeah, it's great. And which childhood book holds the strongest memories for you?
This is a really hard one to answer because I was an avid reader as a child, and I still am. Like that's my escape. The last thing I'll do every single day is read a book before I go to sleep.
Nice.
I used to love the Enid Blyton books, so like The Magic Wishing Chair and The Faraway Tree. Like they were fantastic. I really liked the fantasy of it and the creativity and the imagination, like the visual images you'd be able to get. You'd be able to picture Moonface and all of these things.
I know.
And try and imagine what all the different foods would taste like.
Oh yes, definitely. That was one of my hobbies.
And then I guess probably one of my favourite books ever, although I cry every single time I read it, is Watership Down. Love it. A story told by rabbits, and you think, this could go one of two ways, but I love it.
Yeah, it's pretty gut-wrenching though. Like I remember seeing the animated series for that, and that was like, oh my goodness, this is awful.
Yeah.
Such a beautiful story, but no, it's just such a horrible kind of, really makes you think about things.
It does, yeah. A lot of things. So yeah, no, that was, I still love reading it every now and again. With a box of tissues.
Yes, with the box of tissues, definitely. And lastly, what advice would you give someone who'd like to do what you do, and what advice should they ignore?
Okay. Maybe you could ignore this advice if you wanted. I would probably say if you want to start working in science communication, simply start communicating science. Like communication is a muscle, and the more you use it, the stronger it gets, and your communication is always going to be a work in progress. So if you really like doing podcasts, then do a podcast. If you really like writing, start writing, but go into it knowing who you want to talk to and what you want to achieve. So a lot of people say, I want to talk to the public. That's great, but the public's everyone aged from 3 to 103. What do you actually want to achieve with this? So go in with a really clear idea of who you want to talk to and what you want your communication to actually do. So I think if you're going into any kind of communication or engagement role with no desire other than anything but to hear your own voice or see your own picture, that's probably a bit of an exercise in vanity rather than communication. So yeah, definitely just try it. Get involved with things like National Science Week, the Australian Science Communicators. I have a national network, and there's networks throughout pretty much every region around the world. Get involved. Come and do a course with CPAS at the ANU. We offer everything online. So yeah, get a little bit of the theoretical underpinning of it as well. So that way you can really start to explore why people react to ideas and information the way that they do. And I think, I don't know, I just explore, have fun. And if you don't enjoy it, stop. I think probably the advice that you can most ignore in any kind of career is you need to know what you want to do. You need to have a plan. Yeah, every plan I made fell apart or got shifted onto a different track. And sometimes you just have to trust that you're going to end up in the right spot. So don't keep doing something if you hate it. Just follow what you enjoy and, work for a living rather than live for work.
Yeah, definitely. Well, gotta enjoy what you do.
Life's too short.
It is. So, when you were, trying to figure out what you wanted to do and going through and trying all these things, did you look for anything specific, or was it just, let's have a look at this, let's pick up the paper at random? Like, kind of, what were your thought processes when you were looking at your options?
For a lot of my honours, it was like, dear God, do I really want to finish this? What else is out there? Get me out. And then after that, seeing the ad for the science communication degree was pure serendipity, pure chance. I was looking at jobs in general just to see what was out there. And when I first started in science communication, you didn't ever see science communicator as wanted. It was a communication officer, and it's gone through some evolution since then. So you've got your knowledge brokers, your engagement officers, and all these kinds of things. So really, it's about, I guess for me, what I've tried to do since then is to find organisations that align with my core values, so who I am as a person, what I want to achieve, and the mark I want to make on the world, and the contribution, and actually find an organisation that fits that in me first and foremost, and a job that will enable me to do that. So if I'm working on something that I feel personally strongly about as well as professionally, then that's pretty much been it. I think this is the longest, as an academic, this is the longest I have ever stayed in the one job. Normally I'd do something for a year, learn it, and then I might do it for another year and go, yep, okay, got it now, bored, next. So I guess academia, in many ways, it allows me to have a lot more variety than I've had in other roles. But I think there's always still a part of me that's like, what do I want to be when I grow up? So I think, I'm just you're curious and open, and if the right opportunity comes along, then throw your hat in the ring. You never know.
Yeah, definitely. Got to give it a shot.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's fantastic. Thank you so much for joining me today, Merryn. It's been wonderful speaking to you about your journey and about your work, and being reminded, I guess, about all the things that affect the way that we look at ourselves and the way that other people look at us. It's definitely a lot of food for thought. So if people want to learn more about what you do, where can they go?
Well, you can Google me. I know I turn up. So I am at the ANU, at the Centre for the Public Awareness of Science, or you can find me on Twitter at Mesmuk. But again, if you Google me, you should find me. It's not the world's most common name, so I have that working for me.
Yeah, that definitely works for you. Okay, well, thank you so much again for today. It's been absolutely wonderful. And I'm looking forward to seeing all the other work that you're doing in this space. It's just so much to do.
My pleasure. Thanks so much, Michele.
Okay, great. And have a wonderful day.
Thanks, you too.
I admit it was a little bit meta to speak about the perceptions of women in STEM who communicate about their work on a show about women in STEM who are communicating about their work. But Merryn's paper did prompt a lot of thought about what we do in this space, and not only how others perceive us, but how we perceive each other and ourselves, and the sorts of things that we can do about that. To learn more about Merryn and what we discuss on the show, or to connect with us, please visit the Steam Powered website at steampoweredshow.com. You can also find out more about Merryn on her ANU profile and on Twitter at Mesmuk, or MEZMCK, the links for which will be in the show notes. If you enjoyed this conversation, please let me know. Subscribe to this channel, leave a comment below, and share this with your geeky or geek-curious friends. You can also support Steam Powered on Patreon and Ko-fi under Steam Powered Show, the links for which will also be in the show notes. Thanks for watching!